Yeah, I'm calling them right now. All my young bloods. We got a mission, right? Let's go. The time is now. I see you, PC. Unified. Rally up the troops. We got a mission, let's go.
Yeah, meet me at the drop, boy. Took over the city, we still running with them block boys.
Hey everyone, my name is Sammy and I'm the area director of North Shore Young Life. And I can't be more excited that you are hanging out with us and joining us for Discipleship Weekend online. You know, this is my absolute favorite thing that we do at Young Life. Whether we go to Malibu or Creekside, or if it's online like we are right now, this is, again, my favorite thing that we do, and that's because we get to dig a little bit deeper. We get to go in a little bit harder on topics related to God that we normally don't get to at a camp, right? And you guys are gonna be hearing from a ton of great people, and they're gonna have a lot of awesome things to share. The thing that I want to share with you guys is, I think, a question or questions that we ask ourselves, and many of us or many others ask related to God. And that's when bad things happen. Why does God, why do you let bad things happen? And where are you when those things happen? But before we can even answer those, I think there is something that we have to establish something here. And that's God. Who is God and what is God? And I believe that God, the creator of this universe, who is in all and through all, I believe that this God is love. And it says that in the Bible, and it's manifested, it's shown clearly in the life of Jesus, that this God is love. And in order for us to experience love, God gave us choice. God gave us this thing called free will. Because if, like, for instance, my wife, like, I have to choose my wife, she has to choose me, for there to be authentic relationship and for us to experience love to its greatest capacity. Like, I can't tell her to love me. It just doesn't work that way. And that's what God did. Like, when God created us, He wanted us to experience love to its fullest capacity. And in order to do, in order for us to be able to do that, we have to have a choice. We have to have a choice, right? And what's on the opposite end of love, or here's good and love, like the absolute greatest capacity to do good, requires that there's also an equal amount of capacity to do bad and evil. Therein lies the choice, right? And we make choices all day, every day. And some of these choices are good, and some of these choices either harm ourselves or harm others. And that right there is what we call moral evil. Things that we do that harm one another and ourselves. Moral evil, right? And there's another thing called natural evil, and this is when we as human beings experience pain and hurt and suffering at the hands of natural disasters like earthquakes and hurricanes and things like that are out of our control. Things that are out of our control that bring harm to us. Natural evil. But what I really want to focus more on is this moral evil. But that doesn't mean that these questions don't apply to either. This question of why do you let that happen, and where is God when that happens? I myself haven't been immune to bad things happening in my life that were out of my control, and there were and people that I love dearly have been hurt. There's this mentor of mine, or who I really looked up to, and he died of stomach cancer, right? He died of stomach cancer. Don't know how it happened. And it was a super painful experience. Like, they suffered a lot. I had a grandparent that died of lung cancer, and she didn't smoke at all. Yet somehow she got lung cancer, and she had a really tough go at it. And my mom had to watch her mom slowly die and rapidly, really, in a really painful way. And that must have been really hard for my mom to experience, right? But then on the other hand, I have this other grandmother who lived a long life, lived to nearly 100 years old. And she didn't suffer a bit. She went peacefully. And then I have to sit here and wonder, God, why would you let one grandmother die in such a painful way? And this other one, she got to go easy. Right? How is that fair? Or another friend that I had, they died in a car accident. Somebody chose to drink more than they should. And they cross lanes and hit my friend head on, and my friend died, and that person still lived. And God, why would you let that happen? Where were you? Where were you? And in those moments, whether that be me or any one of us, I think it's okay for you guys to know that we can just yell out, cry out, say things that are on our mind. And these things may typically seem like they're not okay. Like God would be angry at us if we used or said certain things. But I think God wants to hear that from us. I think if this God created the universe, then this God is big enough to take our anger, to take our frustrations in any way. And I think what this God is saying is bring it. And the reason why I believe this is because we see it in Jesus. We see it in Jesus. See, Jesus had this friend named Lazarus. And Lazarus was on his deathbed, and his sisters and friends called out for Jesus because Jesus was in another town. And they wanted to send word to Jesus because Jesus loved Lazarus. And they knew that Jesus had the power to cure Lazarus. And so word got to Jesus, and they're like, Jesus, they're calling for you because Lazarus is dying, and they want you to heal him so that he's better and that he does not die. And Jesus said, hey, don't worry about it. It's all going to be okay. It's all going to be okay. He'll be fine. And Jesus takes his time. And then he goes to the town where Lazarus was. And Lazarus had died, right? Lazarus had died. And Lazarus' sisters, who are also close to Jesus, who called out for Jesus to come, heard that he finally was there. And one of them ran out to where Jesus was before he even entered into town. And she falls on her knees and she's crying. And this is what I imagine her. I can imagine her falling on her knees and crying and saying with accusation, with just all the pain in her heart that someone who loses a loved one has, and saying, where were you? Like, where were you? If you really loved us, if you really loved my brother, you would have been here. Where were you? And I'm not even doing it justice. I think she was a lot angrier, as some of us may have been at God for the things that have happened in our lives. To say, where were you? You could have stopped this from happening. Where were you? And Jesus in that moment falls on his knees. Well, I imagine him falling on his knees. But what the Bible says is that Jesus cried. Jesus wept. And those may be the two of the most powerful words put together in the Bible, because what that says to me is that this God of the universe that created everything came as Jesus to show us what love is like, to show us how to love. This God cried. That this God isn't in some lofty sky, away from us and distant from us. But what this showed me is that this God is telling us that he's right there with us, that he feels our pain, and that we're not alone, and that when we fall down, He's right there next to us. If we're on our knees, He's on His knees. If we're crying, He's crying. He hurts right along with us. Like, why do bad things happen? I can accept this idea that bad things happen because a lot of bad things happen because we have a choice. Like, we are given a choice. And sometimes we make bad choices, and those bad choices affect others. I can accept that. I can even accept the idea that there are things of the world that we as humans don't have control over, and those things also harm us. Like Lazarus, I don't know what he was sick from. I don't know if it was the common flu. I don't know if it was cancer. I don't know. I can accept that there are things that are out of our control. My thing is where is God in all of that? Like, God, where were you when I lost that friend? God, where were you for my mom when she was losing her grandmother? Or when she was losing her mom to cancer? Like, God, where are you when people lose their babies? And I find that answer in this story of Lazarus. Like, God isn't distant. God isn't away somewhere. God is right there with us. God is right there with us. And there's one thing that I want to make sure that you guys understand here. We try to make reasons and excuses for why sometimes bad things happen, right? We say things like, it was in God's plan. God's plans are unknown, and this is part of God's plan. Or when a child dies, some people sometimes say, God needed another angel in heaven, and so they took that child away. I don't buy that. I don't buy that. I don't know if I actually want to believe in that God. I don't know if I want to believe and trust in a God who will tell a mom, sorry for all your pain right now. I had to take that baby away. I just think that there are sometimes things that we can't explain, and it's not okay for us to just chalk it up to say that God wanted another angel in the sky or that it was in God's plan. What plan of a loving God allows for somebody to be abused? How was that in a loving God's plan? I think that's just out of free will that people make bad choices that harm others. That isn't God's plan. I think the more important thing is that where is God in that? Right? Where is God in that? And, you know, in the story of Jesus and how he modeled his life from Lazarus to the death on the cross, I think that what helps me is to know that God is right there along with us. I don't know if, that's where I'll be settled. I don't know if my thoughts will change, but I find that to be comforting for me. And I find that to be true when I read the Bible and the stories of Jesus. When I read stories from the Old Testament and try to process those, that's what I find this God to be. And that kind of God is a God that I think is worth giving a shot. I think that God that wants us to experience love to the greatest capacity and thus giving us free will, yeah, I want to know more about that God. So, guys, I know that I don't know if I've really answered any questions for you. These are my thoughts. These are things that I've been processing in my way, and I encourage you guys to process it with one another, with your leaders. I'm free too. Like, DM me, find me on Instagram, Sammy D Choi, CHOI, or you can find our North Shore Young Life page and you can hit me up. But I really think it would be helpful if you guys talk to your leaders about these questions and these thoughts and all the other topics that you guys might be hearing and watching over this weekend. You guys should really go to your leaders because they're there for you. They're there for you. And just as this God that I've placed my trust in, shown in Jesus, and how this God, Jesus, fell on his knees and cried and suffered along with his people, that's your leaders are modeling that. They're right there with you. When you're crying, they're going to be there. When you're on your knees, they're going to be there. And so I'm just super thankful that you guys have people in your lives like that, because those types of people are the ones that helped me when I was a teenager. And so thanks for hanging out. I hope you guys have a great time hearing from all the other great people. And if we ever run into each other, say what's up. All right, bye.
Yeah, I'm coming in right now. All my young blood.